the gunshot that killed Owen Ferguson in the dusty streets of El Dorado, Nevada, on a sweltering July morning in 1876, left his wife Olivia standing at the doorway of their modest home with nothing but mounting debts and the dress on her back. She watched from the porch as they carried his body past the general store, past the saloon where he had spent too many evenings gambling away what little money they had managed to save from his work at the silver mine. The men who carried him looked everywhere but at her face, their eyes fixed firmly on the ground as if her grief might burn them if they met her gaze. Owen had been 29 years old, reckless and charming in equal measure, and now he was gone because he had accused the wrong man of cheating at cards. The shooter had left town within the hour, and the sheriff made no move to follow. Olivia stood there long after they had taken Owen to the undertaker, her hands gripping the weathered wood of the porch railing until splinters bit into her palms. She was 24 years old, had been married for 3 years, and now found herself utterly alone in a town that had never quite accepted her. She had come from Sacramento, a city girl who read books and spoke her mind, and the good women of El Dorado had never let her forget that she did not quite belong among them. The first real understanding of her situation came 2 days after they buried Owen in the parched cemetery on the hill. Mr. Thornton from the bank arrived at her door with papers in his hand, and regret painted across his ruddy face. The house, he explained in a voice that tried for gentleness and achieved only discomfort, was not truly hers. Owen had borrowed against it months ago, had signed papers that put the property in the bank's hands if he failed to make payments. Those payments were 3 months overdue. "I am sorry, Mrs. Ferguson," Thornton said, turning his hat in his hands, "but you have until the end of the week to vacate the premises. The bank cannot afford to be sentimental in these matters." She wanted to rage at him, to demand how she was supposed to survive, where she was supposed to go. But pride kept her spine straight and her voice level as she thanked him for his time and closed the door. Only then did she allow herself to sink down onto the floor, her back against the door, and truly comprehend the depths of the hole Owen had left her in. The general store where she had occasionally helped with bookkeeping would not hire her full time. The owner, Mrs. Patterson, explained with false sympathy that it would not be proper for a woman alone to be working so closely with men who came through. The seamstress had no need for help. The hotel required references she could not provide. Every door she approached seemed to close before she could even knock. By Thursday, Olivia had sold everything of value in the house, which amounted to precious little. Her wedding ring bought her enough for a week's worth of meals. Owen's pocket watch, the one decent thing he had owned, paid for another few days. She packed what remained of her belongings into a single carpet bag and walked out of the house that had briefly been hers, with no idea where her feet would carry her. The boarding house turned her away. She had no money for even a single night's lodging. The church, she thought, surely the church would help. But Reverend Morrison looked at her with something almost like suspicion when she appeared at his door, as if widowhood might be contagious, as if her husband's gambling and violent death reflected some fundamental flaw in her own character. "The church has limited resources," he said, his voice dry as the desert wind. "We help those who have demonstrated themselves to be worthy of Christian charity. Your husband was not a man who showed much respect for the Lord's teachings." The dismissal stung worse than outright cruelty would have. She turned away without another word, her eyes burning but refusing to shed tears where anyone might see. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that would have been beautiful if she had any room left inside her for beauty. She found herself walking toward the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to scrubland and the road stretched out toward the mountains. She had nowhere to turn, no family to write to, her parents having passed from fever when she was 19, no friends close enough to impose upon. The realization settled over her like a physical weight. She could keep walking, she supposed, walk until her feet gave out or until the desert claimed her. It seemed as reasonable a plan as any other. That was when she saw him. He was working with a horse in a corral just off the main road, a tall man with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that needed cutting. He moved with an easy grace, speaking in low tones to a magnificent chestnut mare that was clearly agitated about something. Olivia stopped walking, arrested by the patience in his movements, the gentle way he reached out to let the horse catch his scent before trying to touch her. The man glanced up and caught sight of Olivia standing there. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. Not pity, not judgment, just a straightforward acknowledgement of her existence that felt like water after days in the desert. He said something final to the horse, gave her neck a pat, and walked toward the fence rail. As he got closer, Olivia could see he was perhaps 30 years old, with strong features and eyes the color of dark coffee. There was a scar along his jaw, faded white against his tan skin. "Evening," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to match the quiet competence of his movements with the horse. "You look lost." Olivia almost laughed at the understatement. "I suppose I am. Where are you headed?" She looked past him, toward the darkening sky, toward the road that led to nowhere she could name. "I do not know." He studied her for a long moment, taking in her worn dress, the carpet bag clutched in her hand, the exhaustion that must have been written all over her face. "You are Mrs. Ferguson," he said, and it was not a question. "You know me, know of you, heard about your husband. I am sorry for your loss." The words were simple, but they carried genuine feeling, which was more than most in town had offered. "Thank you." She hesitated, unsure why she was still standing there, why she had not continued walking. "I should go." "Where?" The question, asked so directly, nearly broke through her carefully maintained composure. "That is not your concern. Maybe not." He leaned against the fence rail, seemingly in no hurry to dismiss her. "But it is getting dark, and these roads are not safe for a woman alone after sunset. Drifters come through regular, and not all of them are friendly. I appreciate your concern, but I can take care of myself." "Can you?" He gestured at her bag. "You have supplies, water, a weapon." She lifted her chin, defensive. "I have what I need, which is nothing." He said it matter-of-factly, without cruelty. "Look, I am not trying to insult you. I am stating facts. It is going to be cold tonight. There are coyotes in those hills, and worse. You walk out there with nothing, you might not see morning. What would you have me do? The town has made it clear there is no place for me here. You could start by not walking off to die in the desert." He straightened up, seemed to consider something. "I have a cabin about 3 miles north of here, up in the foothills. It is not much, but it has 4 walls and a roof. You could stay there tonight at least. Figure out your next move when the sun is up and you are thinking clear." Olivia stared at him, trying to determine if this was charity or something else entirely. "I do not even know your name." "Oscar Franklin." He touched the brim of his worn hat. "I work with horses, train them mostly, do some ranching on the side. I am not a rich man, but I have got a spare room and food enough to share." "Why would you help me? You do not know me." "Because you need help and I am in a position to give it." He met her eyes steadily. "That is reason enough in my book." She wanted to refuse. Pride demanded it. But pride would not keep her warm tonight, would not keep her safe from whatever dangers lurked in the darkness beyond town. And there was something about this man, this Oscar Franklin, that made her think he was offering genuine assistance without strings attached. "Just tonight," she heard herself say. "I will not impose beyond that." "Fair enough." He turned toward the corral. "Let me put the horses up and we can head out. There is about an hour of good light left." Olivia watched as he moved among the animals with that same quiet confidence, securing the corral and checking water troughs. She counted 5 horses in total, all of them looking well cared for and healthy. Whatever else Oscar Franklin might be, he clearly took his work seriously. He emerged a few minutes later carrying a saddle and blanket. "Can you ride?" "I have, though it has been a while." "That mare there, the gray, she is gentle. I will put you on her." He moved with practiced efficiency, saddling both the gray mare and a rangy bay gelding for himself. When he helped Olivia mount, his hands were respectful, impersonal, steadying her without lingering. They rode out of town as the sun touched the mountains, painting long shadows across the scrubland. Oscar set an easy pace, mindful of Olivia's admitted lack of recent riding experience. He pointed out landmarks as they went, a distinctive rock formation, a lightning-struck pine that marked the turn off to his property. "You have lived here long?" Olivia asked, needing to fill the silence with something. "About 5 years. Came out from Colorado after my father died. He left me a little money, enough to buy the land and get started with the horses. No family, just me. Mother died when I was young. No siblings, no wife." He glanced at her. "What about you? Any family you could go to?" "No. My parents died before I married Owen. I have no siblings either." "What about back in Sacramento? You are from there, right?" She looked at him sharply. "How did you know that? Small town. People talk." He shrugged. "Did not mean anything by it, just that you might have friends there, people who would take you in." "I have been gone for 3 years. Whatever connections I had are long since dissolved." She paused. "Owen did not like me maintaining correspondence with anyone from my old life. He said I needed to focus on building a life here." Oscar made a non-committal sound that might have been disapproval, but was too polite to say more. They rode on in silence for a while, climbing gradually into the foothills where the air was slightly cooler and pine trees began to appear among the scrub brush. The cabin appeared as they crested a small rise, a sturdy structure built from local timber with a stone chimney and a wide porch. It was larger than Olivia had expected, clearly built by someone who knew what they were doing. A barn stood nearby, and she could see a chicken coop and what looked like a vegetable garden. "It is no palace," Oscar said, swinging down from his horse, "but it keeps the weather out." He helped her dismount, then led both horses to the barn. Olivia followed, watching as he efficiently removed tack and rubbed both animals down before turning them into stalls with fresh hay and water. "You are good with them," she observed. "Spent most of my life around horses. They make more sense to me than people most of the time." He grinned suddenly, transforming his serious face into something younger and more approachable. Present company excluded, of course. Despite everything, Olivia found herself almost smiling. "Of course." He led her into the cabin, lighting lamps against the gathering darkness. The interior was surprisingly neat, furnished simply but comfortably. There was a main room with a stone fireplace, a table and chairs, a couple of well-worn armchairs. Doors led off to what she assumed were bedrooms. "Guest room is through there," Oscar said, pointing to one of the doors. "It is small but clean. I will get a fire going and fix some supper. You must be hungry." Olivia realized she could not remember the last time she had eaten a full meal. "I am, actually, thank you." "No need to keep thanking me. You are a guest." He moved to the fireplace, began building a fire with the ease of long practice. "There is a wash basin in your room if you want to freshen up." The guest room was indeed small, but it had a real bed with clean quilts, a small dresser, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. Olivia set down her carpet bag and sank onto the bed, suddenly overwhelmed by the simple fact of having a safe place to rest. The last few days felt like a nightmare that just kept stretching longer, and this moment of respite nearly undid her completely. She allowed herself exactly 2 minutes of sitting with her eyes closed, breathing deeply, pulling herself back together. Then she stood, used the water in the basin to wash her face and hands, and returned to the main room where Oscar was stirring something in a pot hung over the now crackling fire. "Just stew," he said. "Nothing fancy, but it is filling. It smells wonderful." And it did, rich and savory, making her stomach clench with hunger. They ate at the table, the meal accompanied by fresh bread that Oscar admitted he had bought from a woman who lived a few miles south. The stew was simple but good, thick with vegetables and chunks of rabbit meat. Olivia ate slowly, trying not to appear too desperate despite her hunger. "So what will you do?" Oscar asked after a while. "After tonight, I mean." Olivia set down her spoon, the question bringing reality crashing back. "I do not know. I have been trying to figure that out. There is no work in El Dorado, or at least none that anyone will give me. I thought perhaps I could travel to Virginia City, try to find work there. It is larger, there might be more opportunities." "That is a long journey, expensive too." "I know." She met his eyes. "I have very little money, Mr. Franklin. Nearly nothing, if I am being honest. I sold everything I could to buy food this week. I suppose I will have to walk to Virginia City, hope I can find work when I arrive." Oscar leaned back in his chair, studying her. "That is a dangerous journey for a woman alone. Rough men work those roads. And even if you make it, what makes you think Virginia City will be any more welcoming than El Dorado?" "Hope," she gave a bitter laugh. "It is about all I have left." He was quiet for a moment, then seemed to come to some decision. "I have a proposition for you. Hear me out before you say no." Olivia tensed, suddenly wary. "What kind of proposition?" "Not that kind," he said quickly, apparently reading her expression. "I am talking about work. Honest work. I could use help around here. The horses need tending, and I have been neglecting the garden something fierce. I am decent at a lot of things, but cooking is not one of them. Having someone to help with the daily tasks would free me up to focus on training, which is where the money comes from. You are offering me employment, room and board, plus a small wage. Not much, but enough to save up if you are still set on leaving eventually. Or if you find you like it here, well, the arrangement could become permanent." It was too much, too generous, and Olivia's instinct was to refuse. She barely knew this man, but what choice did she have? The alternative was walking alone into an uncertain and dangerous future with nothing but hope to sustain her. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this for someone you do not know?" Oscar considered the question seriously. "My father once told me that how we treat people in their worst moments says everything about who we are. You are in a bad spot through no real fault of your own. I can help. Seems simple to me. People will talk. People always talk. Especially in a place like El Dorado," he shrugged. "Let them. I know my intentions are honorable, and so will you. That is what matters." Olivia looked around the cabin, at this unexpected refuge that had appeared just when she needed it most. She thought about the cold darkness that would have been her reality tonight if Oscar Franklin had not stopped her on that road. She thought about his patience with the horses, the genuine kindness in his offer, the straightforward way he met her eyes without pity or judgment. "All right," she said quietly, "I accept, but I will earn my keep, Mr. Franklin. I am not looking for charity." "I am not offering charity," he replied. "I am offering fair work for fair pay, and call me Oscar. Mr. Franklin makes me feel like my father." "Oscar, then, and I am Olivia." "Olivia." He said her name as if testing the feel of it. Well then, Olivia, welcome to your new home, for however long you want to stay. That night, lying in the small guest bed with the sound of wind in the pines outside her window, Olivia stared at the ceiling and wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. But the bed was comfortable, the cabin was warm, and for the first time since Owen's death, she felt something other than despair. It was not hope, not yet, but it was close enough to keep her breathing. Morning came with sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of Oscar moving around in the main room. Olivia dressed quickly in her other dress, which was barely better than the one she had worn yesterday, and emerged to find him putting together breakfast. "Morning," he said, looking up with a smile. "Coffee is on. Eggs will be ready in a minute. Let me do that." Olivia moved to take over the pan. "You said cooking is not your strength. I am adequate at it, at least. Not going to argue with that." He poured 2 cups of coffee, set one at her elbow. "What else are you adequate at?" "I can sew, mend clothes. I kept the books for my father's business when I was younger, so I have a good head for numbers. I can read and write well. I am less skilled with outdoor work, but I am willing to learn." "That is more than adequate. That is practically overqualified for ranch work." Oscar accepted the plate of eggs she handed him. "Though if you are good with numbers, that actually helps a lot. I have been keeping track of my expenses in my head mostly, which is not the best system." They ate together, and then Oscar took her outside to show her around the property properly. The barn was well maintained, currently housing 6 horses. 2 belonged to Oscar himself, the bay gelding he had ridden yesterday and a stocky buckskin mare. The other 4 were in various stages of training. Horses that had been sent to him by owners who needed them, broke to saddle, or corrected of bad habits. "That chestnut you saw me with yesterday, she is a beauty, but she has been mistreated," Oscar explained, leaning on the stall door to watch the mare. "Owner before the current one used a heavy hand. She is fearful and defensive. It is going to take time to bring her around. But you can do it." "I believe so. Every horse can be helped if you have enough patience and the right approach." He glanced at her. "People too, probably." The vegetable garden was indeed in sad shape, overgrown with weeds and badly in need of attention. The chicken coop housed 8 hens and a rooster, and while they seemed healthy enough, their coop could use a thorough cleaning. "I have been meaning to get to all this," Oscar admitted, looking somewhat embarrassed. "But training takes up most of my days, and by the time evening comes around, I am usually too tired to do more than the bare minimum." "Then I will start with the garden and the chickens," Olivia said decisively. "They should not take more than a few days to set right. Then I can focus on other tasks." They fell into a routine with surprising ease. Olivia rose early to make breakfast while Oscar tended the horses. After eating, he would head out to the corral to work with whichever animal he was training that day, while Olivia tackled the accumulated neglect around the property. She weeded the garden, cleaned the chicken coop, mended the holes in Oscar's shirts that he had been ignoring for months. In the evenings, they would eat dinner together and talk. Oscar told her about growing up in Colorado, about his father who had been a ranch hand, and taught him everything about horses. Olivia told him about Sacramento, about her father's dry goods store and how she had loved keeping the ledgers balanced and neat. "You should have been a banker," Oscar observed one evening, "or an accountant. You have the mind for it." "Women are not bankers," Olivia said, though without bitterness. It was simply a fact of the world they lived in. "Maybe they should be. You are better with numbers than half the men I know." After 3 days, Olivia asked to see Oscar's financial records. He produced a battered notebook, filled with scrawled notations that made her wince. By the end of the week, she had reorganized his entire system, creating neat columns that tracked expenses against income, showed which horses were most profitable, identified areas where he was spending more than necessary. "This is remarkable," Oscar said, studying the ledgers she had created. "I had no idea I was losing so much on feed costs. That supplier in town has been overcharging me." "About 20% more than the going rate, from what I can tell," Olivia confirmed. "There is a supplier in Dayton who charges considerably less. If you order in larger quantities, the savings would be substantial." "How did you figure that out?" "I rode into town yesterday and made inquiries." She hesitated. "I hope that was all right. I needed a few things from the general store anyway." "Of course it is all right." "This is not a prison, Olivia. You can come and go as you please." He looked back at the ledgers. "This is going to save me a considerable amount of money. I should be paying you more." "You are paying me fairly," she insisted, though in truth the small wage he provided was barely anything. But she had room and board, and she was building a small savings. It was more than she had dared hope for 2 weeks ago. As summer deepened into August, Olivia found herself settling into this unexpected life with increasing comfort. The work was hard but satisfying. She took pride in the transformation of the garden, now producing squash and beans and tomatoes in abundance. The chicken coop was spotless, the hens laying reliably. The cabin itself had never been cleaner or better organized, but more than the work, it was Oscar's company that surprised her. He was nothing like Owen had been. Owen had been charming and reckless, all big plans and bigger talk, never quite grounded in reality. Oscar was steady and thoughtful, a man who meant what he said and followed through on his word. He treated Olivia with consistent respect, never presuming, never pushing beyond the boundaries of their employer and employee relationship. Yet there were moments that felt like something more, when their hands would brush passing a plate at dinner, when she would look up from her mending to find him watching her with an expression she could not quite read, when he laughed at something she said, and the sound of it made warmth bloom in her chest. She told herself firmly that such thoughts were inappropriate. She was a widow, her husband barely 2 months in the ground. Oscar was her employer, providing her with charity no matter what he called it. She could not, would not, allow herself to develop feelings that could only complicate an arrangement that had saved her life. But hearts, she was learning, do not always listen to reason. It was a Saturday in late August when things shifted between them. Oscar had asked Olivia to come watch him work with the chestnut mare, the mistreated horse who had been so defensive when Olivia first arrived. "I want you to see this," Oscar said, leading Olivia to the corral fence. "Watch." He entered the corral empty-handed, no rope, no bridle. The mare stood at the far end, ears pricked forward, watching him warily. Oscar did not approach directly. Instead, he moved to the side, allowing the horse to see him clearly while giving her space. He stood still for a long moment, then turned his back on her. Olivia watched in fascination as the mare took a tentative step forward, then another. Oscar remained still, not looking at her, his posture relaxed and non-threatening. After what felt like an eternity, the mare walked right up to him and gently nuzzled his shoulder. Oscar turned slowly, raising his hand to stroke the mare's face. She allowed it, even leaning into his touch. The transformation from the nervous, defensive animal Olivia had first seen was remarkable. "Oscar, that is amazing," Olivia said softly. He grinned, still stroking the horse. "She decided to trust me, that is all, just took time and patience. You have a gift." "Anyone could do this if they are willing to put in the time. Horses are not complicated. They want to feel safe. Show them they are safe and they will give you everything." He led the mare over to the fence where Olivia stood. "Want to pet her?" Olivia reached out carefully, let the mare sniff her hand before touching her soft nose. The horse allowed it, though her eyes showed she was still uncertain. "There you go," Oscar murmured. "See, she is learning that people can be kind." Something about the moment, the three of them connected by touch and trust, made Olivia's throat tight with emotion. She looked up to find Oscar watching her with that expression again, the one she could not quite read, but that made her pulse quicken. "You are learning that too, I think," he said quietly. "Learning what? That people can be kind. That you do not have to face everything alone." The words hit deeper than they should have. Olivia withdrew her hand from the horse, suddenly needing distance. "I should start dinner." "Olivia, wait." Oscar came out of the corral, closed the distance between them. "Did I say something wrong?" "No, I need to." She trailed off, unsure what she needed except to escape the intensity of whatever was happening between them. "Talk to me." His voice was gentle. "Please." "There is nothing to talk about." "I think there is." He studied her face. "I think there has been for a while now, and we have both been dancing around it." Her heart was pounding. "Oscar, I do not know what you mean." "Yes, you do." He reached out, not touching her but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his hand near her arm. "I like you, Olivia. More than I should, probably, given the circumstances. But I cannot keep pretending that I see you only as an employee. You are more than that to me." She should deny it. Should remind him that she was a widow, that she worked for him, that this was inappropriate in a dozen different ways. But looking into his eyes, seeing the honesty there, she found she could not lie. "I like you too," she whispered. "But Oscar, it has only been 2 months since Owen died." "People would say it is too soon, that it is wrong." "Do you think it is wrong?" "I do not know what I think. I do not know what I feel. Everything happened so fast. One moment I had a husband, a home, a life. Then it was all gone. And then you appeared, and you have been nothing but kind, and I feel guilty for feeling anything at all because I am supposed to be grieving." "Are you grieving?" The question was asked without judgment, but it still made her flinch. "I am sad that Owen is dead. I did not wish that fate on him." "But grieving, mourning a life I loved and lost." She shook her head slowly. "The truth is our marriage was not happy, Oscar. Owen was charming when he wanted to be, but he was also reckless and irresponsible. He gambled away our money, drank too much, and I cannot remember the last time he asked me what I wanted or how I felt. When he died, part of me felt relief, and what does that say about me? It says you are human. It says you were in a difficult situation and you are being honest about it." Oscar's voice was firm. "You do not owe Owen your life, Olivia. You do not have to stop living because he is gone. But 2 months is an arbitrary amount of time. Some people grieve for years. Some people move on in weeks. There is no rule book for this." He finally closed the distance, took her hand in his. "I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I am just asking if you will let yourself consider the possibility that something good could come from all this. That maybe we found each other for a reason." Olivia looked down at their joined hands, at the way his rough, work-hardened fingers gently held hers. "What if I am not ready?" "Then we go slow. We take our time. But I need to know if you feel this too, if I am not imagining this connection between us." "You are not imagining it." The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. "I feel it too, Oscar. It terrifies me, but I feel it." He smiled then, a slow, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "Good. That is good enough for now." They stood there as the sun sank lower, hands joined, the chestnut mare watching them curiously from the corral. It was not a declaration of love, not a promise of forever, but it was a beginning. And for Olivia, who had thought her life was ending just weeks ago, a beginning felt like everything. The next weeks were a careful dance of growing closer while maintaining propriety. Oscar made no further declarations, did not push for more than Olivia was ready to give. But there were small changes. He found excuses to touch her hand. She caught herself watching him work with a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the summer heat. Their evening conversations grew longer, more personal, filled with shared laughter and comfortable silences. In early September, Oscar needed to travel to Virginia City to deliver 2 of the trained horses to their owner and negotiate a new contract. He asked Olivia if she would like to accompany him. It would be a long day, he said. We would leave before dawn and likely not return until after dark. But I thought you might enjoy seeing the city, and frankly, I would enjoy your company. Olivia agreed, and they set out early on a cool morning with the promise of autumn in the air. They rode side by side, leading the 2 trained horses behind them. As the sun rose, painting the mountains in shades of pink and gold, Oscar pointed out landmarks and told stories about his early days in Nevada. Virginia City was everything El Dorado was not. Large, booming, chaotic with silver money and mining operations. They navigated the crowded streets to a prosperous ranch on the outskirts where the horse owner, a man named Garrett, greeted Oscar warmly. "Franklin, good to see you. And who is this?" "My associate, Mrs. Ferguson. She manages my business affairs." Oscar said it smoothly, elevating Olivia's status in a way that made Garrett take her seriously. The transaction went well. Garrett was impressed with the horses, paid Oscar's fee without complaint, and immediately contracted him for 2 more horses. When he learned of Olivia's bookkeeping skills, he asked if she might look over his accounts as well. "My man keeps the books, but I always feel like something is not adding up right," Garrett admitted. "If you could spare an hour, Mrs. Ferguson, I would pay you for your time." Olivia spent the next hour reviewing Garrett's ledgers and found several discrepancies that suggested his bookkeeper was either incompetent or skimming money. She explained her findings carefully, showing Garrett the evidence. "I will be damned," Garrett said, studying the figures. "I knew something was wrong. Mrs. Ferguson, you have done me a great service. I will handle this immediately." He paid her double what he had initially offered as they left. Oscar was beaming. "You were magnificent in there. Did you see how he listened to you? You commanded respect." Olivia felt a flush of pride. It felt good to use my skills again. I had forgotten how much I enjoyed that kind of work. They had lunch at a restaurant in town, a luxury that felt almost decadent after months of simple meals at the cabin. Over roast beef and potatoes, Oscar became serious. "You know, you could do this. The bookkeeping, I mean. There are probably dozens of men like Garrett in this area who need someone competent to manage their accounts. You could build a real business." "I am a woman, Oscar. People do not take women seriously in business." Garrett did. "He listened to you, valued your expertise, paid you well for it." Oscar leaned forward. "I am not saying it would be easy, but you have the skills and there is clearly a need. You could do this, Olivia." The idea took root in her mind, a possibility she had not allowed herself to consider. Not just surviving, but actually building something of her own. It felt impossible and intriguing in equal measure. They started back as the sun was setting, and by the time they reached the foothills, it was full dark. The temperature had dropped considerably, and Olivia was shivering despite her shawl. "Here," Oscar said, stopping his horse and shrugging out of his coat. "Put this on. You will be cold." "I will be fine. Take it." The coat was warm from his body and smelled like him, horse and leather, and something indefinably Oscar. Olivia wrapped it around herself gratefully. When they reached the cabin, Oscar helped her dismount, his hands lingering at her waist. "Thank you for coming with me today. It was better with you there. I enjoyed it. Thank you for including me." They stood close in the darkness, the only light coming from the stars overhead and the lamp Oscar had left burning in the cabin window. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. "Olivia," Oscar said softly. "Can I kiss you?" Her breath caught. It was too soon. She should say no, should maintain proper boundaries. But she found herself nodding, found herself swaying toward him. His kiss was gentle, almost tentative, giving her space to pull away if she wanted. But Olivia did not want to pull away. She leaned into it, let herself feel the warmth of his lips on hers, the solid strength of him holding her carefully as if she were something precious. When they parted, Oscar rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks." "I know, me too. Is this all right? Are we all right?" "Yes." And saying it, Olivia realized it was true. "Yes, we are all right." They went inside and Oscar built up the fire while Olivia prepared a simple supper from leftovers. The kiss had changed something between them, lowered a barrier that had been necessary but constraining. They moved around the kitchen in comfortable synchronicity, hands brushing, smiles exchanged. After eating, they sat together on the worn sofa in front of the fire, closer than they had allowed themselves to sit before. Oscar took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I need to tell you something," he said. "About why I am so comfortable being alone out here, why I do not go into town much. All right. I was engaged once back in Colorado. Her name was Margaret. We were planning to marry, had the church reserved and everything." He stared into the fire. 2 weeks before the wedding, she told me she had made a mistake, that she cared for me but did not love me. She married someone else 6 months later. "Oscar, I am sorry. It was years ago. I am past it now, but it made me cautious, made me want to protect myself. When I came to Nevada, I told myself I was better off alone, that I did not need anyone else." He looked at her. "And then you walked into my life and suddenly alone did not feel like enough anymore." Olivia squeezed his hand. "I am afraid, too, of getting hurt again, of making another mistake. Owen was not cruel, but he was careless with my heart. I do not think I could survive that again. I would never be careless with you, with your heart." Oscar brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. "You are too important." They sat there as the fire burned down, talking quietly about their pasts, their fears, their hopes. When Olivia finally stood to go to her room, Oscar walked her to the door. "Sleep well," he said. "You too." Another kiss, longer this time, deepening into something that made Olivia's knees weak. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Oscar stepped back deliberately. "I should let you rest." Probably wise. But Olivia lay awake for a long time that night, her fingers touching her lips, marveling at how much her life had changed in just a few short months. As September moved into October, Oscar and Olivia's relationship deepened. They were careful to maintain some propriety, aware that should anyone from town visit, there could be talk. But in the privacy of the cabin and the land around it, they allowed themselves the freedom to be together. Oscar taught Olivia to ride better, taking her on long rides through the foothills to see the aspens turning gold. Olivia began implementing her idea of offering bookkeeping services, starting with Garrett's referrals. Word spread that there was a woman with exceptional skills, and soon she had a steady stream of clients willing to pay for her expertise. The money she earned was hers. Oscar insisted. He refused to take a cut, despite her protests that she lived on his land. "You are building something of your own," he said firmly. "I will not profit from your hard work beyond the pleasure of watching you succeed." One evening in late October, as the first serious cold snap of the season settled over the land, they sat together after dinner with Olivia going over her accounts. "Look at this," she said, showing Oscar the ledger. "I have saved nearly $100 in the last 2 months. It is not a fortune, but it is mine, money I earned. I am proud of you." Oscar meant it. She could hear it in his voice. "I owe it to you. If you had not helped me that day on the road, you would have found another way. You are too strong to have let the desert take you." "I am not sure about that." Olivia closed the ledger. "I was at the end of my rope that day, Oscar, truly at the end. You saved my life. Then I am glad I was there." He pulled her closer. "Because I cannot imagine my life without you in it now." The words hung in the air between them, heavier than perhaps he had intended. Olivia turned to look at him, found his eyes serious and intent on her face. "Olivia Ferguson, I love you." Her breath stopped. "Oscar, I know it has not been long. I know by some people's standards we should wait longer, be more proper about all this. But life is short and uncertain, and I am tired of pretending what I feel is anything less than love." He took both her hands in his. "I love you. I love your strength and your intelligence. I love the way you hum when you are working in the garden. I love how you keep my life organized in ways I never could myself. I love talking to you, being with you, watching you come into your own. I just love you." Tears were streaming down Olivia's face, but she was smiling. "I love you too. I think I have for a while now, but I was afraid to say it, afraid it was too soon or wrong somehow. It is not wrong. Nothing this right could be wrong." Oscar cupped her face in his hands, wiped away her tears with his thumbs. "Marry me, please. Make this official, make it permanent." "Yes." The word came without hesitation. "Yes, Oscar, I will marry you." He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, and Olivia felt any lingering doubts or fears burn away like morning fog. This was right. He was right. They were right together in a way she and Owen had never been. They married 3 weeks later in a quiet ceremony at Oscar's cabin with only a handful of witnesses. Garrett came, as did the woman who supplied Oscar with bread and her husband. The justice of the peace from Dayton performed the service. Olivia wore a new dress she had made herself, simple but pretty in a deep blue fabric. Oscar wore his best clothes and looked nervous and happy in equal measure. "I, Oscar Franklin, take you, Olivia Ferguson, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he said, his voice steady and sure. "I, Olivia Ferguson, take you, Oscar Franklin, to be my lawfully wedded husband," she replied, and felt the truth of the words settle into her bones. When the justice pronounced them married, Oscar kissed her to the cheers of their small audience. It was nothing like Olivia's first wedding, which had been large and elaborate and full of people who barely knew her. This was intimate and genuine, witnessed by people who actually cared about them. That night, lying in Oscar's bed, now their bed, Olivia marveled at the journey that had brought her here. "What are you thinking?" Oscar asked, stroking her hair. "That 6 months ago I thought my life was over, and now everything is beginning." "Good things come to those who survive the bad," Oscar said. "We both survived our share. We deserve this happiness." "Yes." Olivia turned in his arms to face him. "We do." The winter that followed was the happiest time of Olivia's life. She continued her bookkeeping business, which kept growing despite the harsh weather making travel difficult. Oscar worked with the horses, his reputation for gentling difficult animals spreading throughout the territory. They worked side by side during the days and lay together at night, building a life that felt solid and real. In March, Olivia realized her monthly courses had not come. She waited another month to be certain before telling Oscar. "I think I might be with child," she said one evening over dinner, nervous about his reaction. Oscar's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, concern, then pure joy. "Truly, I believe so. It is early yet, but the signs are there." He came around the table and pulled her into his arms. "Olivia, that is wonderful. Are you happy about it?" "I am." And she was, she realized. With Owen, the idea of children had always felt more like obligation than joy. With Oscar, it felt like the natural extension of the love they shared. "Are you?" "I am thrilled. Terrified but thrilled," he laughed. "We are going to be parents." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through spring and summer. Olivia continued working as long as she was able, finally having to stop traveling to clients in August when the heat and her size made riding too uncomfortable. Oscar fussed over her constantly, making sure she ate properly and rested enough. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," Olivia protested when he tried to prevent her from weeding the garden. "I know, but I worry. Let me worry. It makes me feel useful." Their daughter was born on a clear October evening. A year and 3 months after the day, Olivia had stood on that road with nowhere to turn. Oscar delivered the baby himself with the help of the neighbor woman, and when he placed the tiny squalling infant in Olivia's arms, both of them were crying. "She is perfect," Olivia whispered, studying the tiny face, the shock of dark hair. "She is, just like her mother." Oscar kissed Olivia's forehead. "You did beautifully." They named her Amelia Grace, and she became the center of their world. Oscar proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle with the baby in the same way he was with his horses. Olivia had never seen him happier than when he was holding their daughter, singing to her in his rumbling voice or just watching her sleep. As Amelia grew from infant to toddler, Olivia gradually returned to her bookkeeping work. She hired a young woman from Dayton to help with household tasks and child minding a few days a week, which freed her to rebuild her client base. The business thrived, becoming well known throughout the region. Oscar's horse training operation also grew. He took on a young apprentice, a 19-year-old named David who showed real talent with the animals. With the extra help, Oscar was able to expand his operation, training more horses and commanding higher fees. 2 years after Amelia's birth, they welcomed a son they named Samuel Owen. Giving the baby Owen's name as a middle name had been Olivia's idea, a way to acknowledge that chapter of her life without letting it define her future. "Are you sure?" Oscar had asked when she suggested it. "I do not need you to memorialize him for my sake. It is not for you. It is for me. Owen was part of my story, part of what brought me here to this life. I can acknowledge that while also being fully committed to our life together." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The children grew healthy and happy, raised with horses and wide open spaces. Olivia's business became so successful that she eventually hired 2 assistants to help manage the workload. Oscar's reputation as the best horse trainer in the territory brought clients from as far as California. On a warm evening in June, 5 years after their wedding, Oscar and Olivia sat on the porch watching Amelia and Samuel play in the yard. Amelia was 6 now, all long limbs and determination, teaching her 3-year-old brother to be gentle with the barn cats. Samuel, who had his father's dark hair and his mother's quick intelligence, was listening intently to his sister's instructions. "Did you ever imagine this?" Olivia asked, leaning against Oscar's shoulder. "That day you found me on the road, did you have any idea we would end up here? Honestly." "No." Oscar wrapped his arm around her. "I just knew you needed help and I could provide it. Everything else was a surprise. A good surprise. The best surprise." He kissed the top of her head. "You know, I was thinking about expanding the barn. With the business growing, we could use more space. Maybe build a proper training arena too." "That sounds expensive. We can afford it now. Between your business and mine, we are doing well, better than I ever thought possible when I first bought this land." Olivia smiled. It was true. They had built something remarkable together, a life of substance and meaning. She had gone from having nothing, from standing on that road with no future she could see, to having everything that mattered. "I am proud of us," she said. "Of what we have built together." "Me too." Oscar was quiet for a moment. "You know, people in town still talk sometimes, about how fast we married, about how it was not proper." "Do they? I had not heard." "Garrett mentioned it, said someone at the general store in El Dorado was gossiping." He squeezed her shoulder. "I told him anyone who wanted to judge us could take a look at our life and see we made the right choice. Love is not improper, no matter what the timing." Olivia turned to kiss him. "I would make the same choice again every time. Even knowing it would cause talk, even knowing some people would disapprove. You were exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it." "You turn here to me," Oscar said softly. "That is what I should have said that day on the road. When you had nowhere to turn, you should turn to me." "I did turn to you, and you caught me. Always will." As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, they sat together watching their children play. The chestnut mare, long since fully trained and kept by Oscar as a personal horse, watched from the corral. Chickens clucked in their coop. The vegetable garden, now substantial and productive, showed the green promise of the summer harvest to come. It was not the life Olivia had imagined for herself when she was a young woman in Sacramento, reading books and dreaming vague dreams of the future. It was not the life she had tried to build with Owen in El Dorado, struggling against his recklessness and the town's judgment. It was something entirely different, something she had not known existed until the moment she found it. Or rather, the moment it found her. When Amelia and Samuel were finally worn out from play, they came to the porch for goodnight kisses. Amelia climbed into Oscar's lap while Samuel claimed Olivia's. "Tell us the story," Amelia demanded. It was her favorite tale, one she requested almost nightly. "Which story?" Oscar asked, though he knew perfectly well. "How you met Mama." Oscar and Olivia exchanged a smile over the children's heads. "Well," Oscar began, "your mother was on a road with nowhere to turn. And you said turn here to me," Samuel interrupted, having heard this story enough times to know his favorite part. "That is right. I saw her there and I knew I needed to help, so I offered her a place to stay just for one night. But she stayed forever," Amelia said with satisfaction. "Because we fell in love," Olivia added. "Sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us to the best things. Sometimes when we think everything is ending, it is really just beginning." "And you lived happily ever after," Samuel declared. "We are living happily ever after," Oscar corrected gently. "Right now. This is the happily ever after." They put the children to bed, then returned to the porch to sit together in the gathering darkness. In the distance, coyotes called to each other, a wild sound that reminded them they lived on the edge of the untamed lands. But here, in this place they had built together, they were safe and they were home. "I love you," Olivia said, not for the first time, not for the last time. "I love you too," Oscar replied, pulling her close. Years continued to pass, bringing the inevitable changes that life always brings. The children grew older, Amelia developing her mother's head for business and her father's way with animals, Samuel showing artistic talent that surprised them all. Olivia's bookkeeping business eventually evolved into a full accounting firm with offices in both Dayton and Virginia City, respected throughout Nevada. Oscar became renowned enough that people came from neighboring territories to have him train their horses. They had two more children, daughters born 3 years apart, named Rose and Clara. The cabin was expanded twice to accommodate the growing family, eventually becoming a proper house with multiple bedrooms and a parlor where Olivia could meet clients. On their 20th anniversary, Oscar took Olivia back to the spot where they had first met. The road looked much the same, though a proper town had grown up around the area as Nevada developed. They stood together looking down the road that led toward the mountains. "I think about her sometimes," Olivia said. "The woman I was that day, so lost and desperate. I wish I could tell her that everything would be all right, better than all right." "She found out anyway," Oscar said. "She took a chance on a stranger and it changed everything." "We were both taking chances that day. You did not know I would not be trouble. I could have been difficult or demanding or any number of things. But you were not. You were exactly who you were supposed to be." He turned to face her. 20 years, Olivia. 20 years of waking up next to you, working beside you, building this life together. I would not change a single thing. Not even the hard parts. The year the drought nearly killed the garden, when Amelia broke her arm, when Samuel had that terrible fever. Not even those. They are all part of our story. The hard parts taught us we could survive anything together. He took her hands in his. "I am not a man who believes in fate particularly, but you and me, this feels like it was always supposed to happen." Olivia stood on her toes to kiss him. "I love you, Oscar Franklin. Thank you for being there that day. Thank you for seeing me when I needed to be seen. Thank you for turning to me when you had nowhere else to turn." They stood there as the sun set. Two people who had found each other in the midst of life's chaos and built something lasting. Around them, the wild Nevada landscape stretched endless and beautiful. The same land that had witnessed their beginning now holding the accumulated weight of their years together. When they returned home, the house was full of noise and life. All 4 children were there, along with Amelia's husband and their infant son, Oscar and Olivia's first grandchild. David, Oscar's former apprentice, had become like family over the years and joined them for dinner with his wife and children. The long table Oscar had built was filled with people, with love, with the evidence of a life well lived. As Olivia looked around at the faces gathered there, at the home they had created, at the family they had built from nothing but hope and determination and love, she felt the profound satisfaction of a journey well traveled. She had started with nothing, standing on a dusty road with no future she could see. Oscar had offered her a chance, just one night of shelter, and from that single act of kindness had grown this entire beautiful, complicated, perfect life. After dinner, as everyone gathered around the fire sharing stories and laughter, Oscar caught Olivia's eye across the room. He smiled, that same steady, genuine smile that had made her feel safe all those years ago. She smiled back, a silent conversation passing between them that needed no words. This was what happiness looked like. Not a single perfect moment, but an accumulation of moments, days, years spent building something together. Every challenge they had faced, every obstacle they had overcome, had been worth it for this. For the love that had grown between them, for the family they had created, for the life that had seemed impossible on that day when she had nowhere to turn. Later that night, when everyone had gone home or to bed, and the house was finally quiet, Olivia and Oscar sat together on the porch as they had done countless times before. The stars overhead were brilliant in the clear Nevada night, the same stars that had witnessed their beginning now watching over their continued story. "Happy anniversary," Oscar said, pulling her close. "Happy anniversary," Olivia replied, resting her head on his shoulder. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the land they knew so well. Somewhere in the darkness, a horse whinnied softly. The wind rustled through the pines. The world turned on, indifferent to the small human dramas played out beneath the vast sky. But here, in this place, these two people had created something that mattered. They had taken their individual broken pieces and forged them into something whole. They had turned pain into purpose, desperation into determination, and loneliness into a love that would last all their days. Olivia Ferguson had had nowhere to turn on that July day in 1876, when her husband's death left her destitute and alone. But Oscar Franklin had been there, had offered his hand and his heart, had said without words what would become the foundation of their life together. "You turn here to me." And she had turned to him, and he had turned to her, and together they had found their way home. As the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, they remained there together. Two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed. The wild Nevada landscape stretched around them, beautiful and harsh and indifferent. The same land that had nearly claimed Olivia on that desperate day now cradling the life she and Oscar had built together. It was not a fairy tale. It was better than a fairy tale. It was real, earned through work and patience and the daily choice to love each other through whatever came. And as they finally rose to head inside, to the warm house full of sleeping children and grandchildren, to the bed they had shared for 20 years, they carried with them the bone-deep knowledge that they had done something remarkable. They had taken the worst moment of Olivia's life and transformed it into the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to both of them. They had built a family, a home, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. And they had done it together, step by step, day by day, year by year. In the end, that was what love looked like. Not a dramatic rescue, though Oscar had certainly rescued her that day. Not a passionate declaration, though they had made plenty of those over the years. Love looked like two people choosing each other, over and over again, through all the seasons of their lives. Love looked like Oscar teaching their children to be gentle with horses, like Olivia balancing ledgers at the kitchen table while dinner cooked, like the thousand small kindnesses and considerations that made up a shared life, like knowing that no matter what challenges came, they would face them together. The widow had had nowhere to turn. The cowboy had said, "You turn here to me." And in that moment, in that simple offer of help from one human to another, had been planted the seed of something extraordinary. 20 years later, that seed had grown into a mighty tree, spreading its branches to shelter children and grandchildren, providing shade and sustenance to all who gathered beneath it. And at its roots always were Oscar and Olivia, holding each other up, growing stronger together. Their love the foundation upon which everything else was built. As they settled into bed that night, Oscar pulled Olivia close, and she fitted herself against him with the ease of long practice. This was home. Not the house, not the land, not even the family they had created. This right here, the two of them together, was home and always had been. "Good night, my love," Oscar whispered into the darkness. "Good night," Olivia replied, and closed her eyes knowing she was exactly where she was meant to be. Outside, the Nevada night continued its ancient rhythms. The stars burned cold and distant. The wind sang through the mountains. And in a small house in the foothills, two people slept peacefully, surrounded by the evidence of their love, their lives intertwined so completely that it was impossible to say where one ended and the other began. They had found each other when both needed finding. They had built something beautiful from nothing, and they would continue, for all the years remaining to them, to choose each other, to turn to each other, to be each other's home. The widow had had nowhere to turn. The cowboy had offered himself as shelter. And together, they had created a love story for the ages, one that would be told and retold by their children and grandchildren, a testament to the power of kindness, the strength of commitment, and the transformative nature of true love. This was their happily ever after, earned and deserved and absolutely real. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.